Morning, Robin. Lovely to
Good morning,
see
Karen.
you. And we're going to talk about the Sudan Medical Link today. You've kindly been to Camford and talked to us about that before. And as a result of that, we've sponsored Adema Francis as a laboratory technician. And so we can talk a bit about him at the end. And we know the bishops launched a specific fund for what's happening in South Sudan, but from your point of view, from the Sudan Medical Link, how has COVID-19 affected the work out there?
Well, people out there have been confined to their areas, so they can't cross borders. They can't cross from one state to another state. Training schools have temporarily closed, so many students, and one student in particular, not Adema Francis, but somebody called Jeremiah, had to stay, has actually got to go home from Arua in Uganda because there was no schooling continuing, which is very frustrating for them. Also, of course, we have not been able to fundraise in the same way as we normally do.
Yes, yeah.
But maybe we'll come on to that.
Yes. So what have you been able to do then during this period of your normal work with supporting? We've
been able to have some WhatsApp conversations with them. Zoom doesn't seem to work very well in South Sudan, but WhatsApp does work very well. And we've had a few communications with clinical officers and staff of the ECS, the Episcopal Church of Sudan, and bishops and their clergy. And so we have learned that they are suffering tremendously because the border of Sudan, South Sudan and Uganda was closed for a time. I'm not sure whether it's opened again yet. I don't think it has. Consequently, food prices have rocketed. There hasn't been the lot of people are going hungry. The drugs are running out, and there's been considerable difficulty getting them across. But we do have a pharmacist called Ram, who is actually very good at getting. He has many contacts in Mombasa, in Kampala, and on the border, and has managed to get lorry loads of drugs into Juba. And then we have flown them from Juba to clinics. So, but we have, as I think you have a slide showing our income and expenditure, we have just about used up this year all the money we have for drugs. But we have been able to supply them particularly with antibiotics and antimalarials.
So are you aware of what sort of drugs they are lacking now? Are they sort of everyday drugs like for blood pressure and problems?
Yeah, well, we give, I mean, blood pressure, the ability to coordinate more advanced medicine like control of blood pressure, diabetes, is very difficult. So at the moment, those sorts of drugs are just not part of our commitment or part of our giving. So we are very basic at the moment, and also giving them some extra funds for improving their health, because if they are malnourished, they're more liable to infections.
Yes. That does sound a fairly desperate situation.
It is indeed, and we are very worried, as I've said already, that, for example, the Bishop's Garden Party, Bishop Nicholas and his wife Helen, who run this amazing garden party in the beginning of June, didn't take place. And last year that raised between £14,000 and £15,000, which is a lot of money suddenly to lose. Yeah. And of course, lots of very good-hearted people run coffee mornings, which hasn't happened. At the Minster, in Church House, every Friday lunchtime, there is a soup lunch, which is run by somebody called Anne Pollard, and they have given many thousands of pounds to the Medical Link over the last few years. And none of these obviously have been able to take place. We hope it will restart in October. And at the moment, we can't afford to give any more drugs this year, the whole this year, nearly 6 months, because one thing we are, and I know you're interested in this, Karen, training. We are desperate to continue the training. So we have kept our funds afloat and made sure that we can finish the 3 years training of nurses, clinical officers, midwives, lab technicians.
That's good, obviously, because we do have that interest with edema, and there is a picture of edema that you've sent us in those shots that you've sent that we'll show as this goes out.
Yes, and the other person with her is somebody called Natalia, who, interesting enough, is also doing a lab technician's course and is actually sponsored by the Minster.
Right.
So
that's good to know, isn't it?
So it's good to know that people are beginning to sponsor people. But of course, we have many people in training in Central Equatoria and also in a place called Wau, at the Mary Hope College up in Wau, which is halfway to the Darfur border. And we are supporting up to 6 students there.
Right.
And nobody is sponsoring them, apart from us.
And just finally, how are the medical services in the area coping with the pandemic?
Well, in the periphery, we don't deal with Juba where there is a hospital. So we have no connection. We have connections with Juba. We know some of the surgeons and physicians in Juba, but we do not give any aid to Juba itself. Other charities are responsible for that. But in the countryside, and particularly down to the southwest, because of the lockdowns that have occurred, there's been very little, as far as we know. I mean, there's no testing available.
Right.
And obviously people have died from malaria, malnutrition, etc. Whether they've had COVID or not is not known, but there haven't been any significant, obvious COVID infections in the southwest.
That's a relief, isn't it?
Which is a relief, yes.
It's a relief.
But of course, in a sense, coronavirus epidemic is in its infancy in Africa compared to Europe.
So how do you see the future 6 months to a year then, in light of what you've said?
Well, as you know, and as I've said before many times, I've been out to South Sudan 7 times, the last time in November 2018, and I was hoping to go out again this autumn, but clearly that is not going to be possible now. We need desperately to get out again next year, so we hope that we'll be able to get out again. The Lambeth conference, when a lot of Sudanese bishops come over, has been postponed till 2022. Right. It's not taking place in 2021 as originally we'd hoped. So they're not, the Sudanese are not going to get over here for us to talk to them. But I'm glad to say that, as I've already said, emails do get through and we do get good communication from them. And as you saw, one of the pictures of Emmanuel in Nazara giving thanks for the birthing center and a new classroom block, which an American charity supported the building of.
Yeah, it's a lovely picture, that. Yeah. Well, thank you, Robin. And we will follow with interest from Canford.
Well, thank you for Canford. Thank you so much, because at least we know that your Edema Francis is sponsored and your commitment is solid and will take place for the next 2 to 3 years. So we are very grateful for you, Karen, coordinating this.
I think the churches, certainly from Canford Church, we do feel a connection with Sudan.
No, it's wonderful because obviously, well, Chris Tebbett's been out there and he's coordinated. He knows, Archbishop Samuel very well, and he has been a great support to the link in general, the Sudan link in general.
Thank you.